Hello, sippers. I'm Martia.
I'm Demetrius.
I'm Renee.
And welcome to today's episode of Sip and Unwind True Crime Podcast. Hey, ladies. Hey, sippers.
Hey, how are you?
That's that ATL, Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay.
How are y'all ladies doing today?
I'm good, actually, today. Today's a good day.
I'm good too. It's nice outside and the weather is nice, so I'm feeling pretty good today.
Me too, ladies. I have to admit, today has been a pretty relaxing day so far, and I'm looking forward to going out with my husband this afternoon, this evening, whatever time it's going to be. Yeah.
Since my significant other is out of town for the weekend, I don't know what, man, I just be loving these times. I swear.
You love those times.
Okay. I'm laying in bed, eating what I want to eat, looking at TV, turning off the light to go to sleep whatever time I want to.
You're living the life over there, girl.
Okay.
I look around, I'm like, man, this room is a mess.
You having your own sleepover and pajama party all in one.
You know?
Okay.
Gosh, if
wow.
I lived alone, I'd be so messy because I'd just be like, oh my gosh, this is a mess. Shit everywhere. But it'll be cleaned back up before he comes home, so he won't be there like, God dang.
Oh wow. She is chilling, ain't she, Demetrius?
I love it. I'm here for that.
Oh, child. All right, ladies. I'm glad you guys are having a good day, but I'm ready to get this whole case started. So let's talk about what we're sipping on today. I'll start with myself.
Okay.
So today I am doing a Patron margarita. Margaritas have kind of been my thing this summer, and I haven't had Patron in a minute, so I figured, why not? It's just sitting there. Nobody's drinking it, so Patron margarita is my drink of choice for today. And I think if I can just go ahead and warn y'all now, this is one of those cases where you should be sipping on something a little bit strong anyway. Okay. So what are y'all sipping on?
I know a lot of people love margaritas, but every time I drink them, they're just not good to me.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is exactly.
That you need a margarita frozen or on the rocks, because it's different.
I don't like frozen drinks anyway, but even I can do them on the rocks, and it's just, I've had them many times at different places, and it's just not good.
Do you ever do the flavored margarita, or are you talking about just a plain margarita is nasty to you?
A plain one. I don't think I've tried flavored ones.
You need to try the flavored ones. They're
yes,
good.
Indeed.
Because I'm just like, man, so many people are into these margaritas, and I just can't do it. I don't know if it's the alcohol that's in it it's just not, hitting my tongue right.
Yeah, plain margaritas are not my favorite. I would agree with you on that. But a flavored margarita, or if you spice up your regular margarita with a good chaser, is what I would say.
Yeah,
you can kind of spruce it up. So yeah, I think you just haven't tried the right margarita.
I might try some flavored ones or something maybe next time and see if maybe that might be what it is. Because I just feel like I'm left out of a movement because everybody loves margaritas. You guys go out to the Mexican restaurant.
I was gonna say, what do you drink when you go to the Mexican? Because I've never paid attention to you ordering drinks.
You just get a different kind of flavored drink, but it's not a margarita.
Oh, okay.
Alcohol.
Wow. Okay.
Well, what I'm drinking on, since I'm kind of basic, I'm doing the pineapple Ciroc on the rock. It's plain and simple. I usually don't like vodka on the rocks. I couldn't do that before, but this pineapple is really smooth, so you can kind of get your buzz on really quickly, and it doesn't taste bad to me.
Okay. Well, what I'm drinking on is a beverage that we had on one of our YouTube live productions.
Oh,
is a strawberry wine punch. I don't know if you ladies remember that.
I remember that.
I can't remember who made that.
Me.
You made it? Okay.
Yes, it's so good. That was really good. That was really good because I had the strawberry vodka.
I remember that, and it was good.
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, ladies. So sounds like we are ready. Put y'all seatbelts on because.
Get my drink. Let me take a.
I know.
Okay, ladies and sippers. So today's case takes us back in time to the year 1984, and this is the disturbing case of Alton Coleman and his girlfriend, Debra Denise Brown. There are several victims in this case, as this serial killer couple went on a killing rampage across the Midwest from May 1984, ending in July 1984. The killer couple committed crimes in Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Kentucky, and Michigan. So throughout the story, I will use the first names of everyone mentioned, but as for Alton Coleman and Debra Brown, from time to time, you're going to hear me refer to them as killer couple. So with that being said, let me go ahead and give y'all the details on this particular case. So here's a little background information about Debra and Alton. Debra was one of 11 children. She suffered trauma as a child and was described as having a dependent personality. She was also diagnosed as borderline mentally retarded. Just a side note, the word retarded might be offensive to some, but it was a term used back in the 1980s to describe someone with below average intelligence.
That's a clinical word though for it, right? It's just that people have been using it as a derogatory kind of.
I know.
Well, it was a clinical word back then, but like I will never diagnose someone as being retarded in 2021. Yeah, it's
That was the word, mildly retarded.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a medical doctor might use that term. So because to me, mentally retarded would kind of fall into a psychiatric category too, but we don't use that word. So I don't know what they use in place of it. Like when I did Google it, but I forgot what it said. But anyway, all right. At the age of 21, Debra Brown was engaged to another man when she met 28-year-old Alton Coleman in 1983. She broke off her previous engagement and she decided to leave her family and begin a new relationship with Alton Coleman. Before she met Alton, Debra had never gotten in trouble with the law. She was never violent in any way until this new relationship began. So here's a little backstory about Alton. Alton was born on November 6, 1955 in Waukegan, Illinois, a city that's about 35 miles outside of Chicago. All right, so Alton was a middle school dropout who was raised by his 73-year-old grandmother and prostitute mother. Alton was also classified as mildly retarded, and he was teased by his classmates because he sometimes wet his pants. The kids in school nicknamed him quote unquote pissy. His mother, like I said, she was a prostitute. I giggle as I was typing this up.
Kids are mean.
Kids are mean, yes. Also, his mother was a prostitute, but she would often have sex with her customers in Alton's presence. So, with all that dysfunction in his background, it's no surprise that after Alton dropped out of middle school, he started getting in trouble with the law. It started off with him committing petty crimes such as setting fires and property damage, but then as years went on, the crimes got more serious to include rape and other sex crimes. After one of his stints in jail for an armed robbery charge, he would emerge 2 years after serving that time with a desire for rough sex and a tendency to dress in women's clothing.
Oh, he had a lot going on.
Yeah, he did. And Alton was also known for having an insatiable sex drive, which he satisfied with women, men, and children. By the age of 19, Alton was charged with 6 sex crimes from 1973 to 1983, including the rape of his niece, which those charges were later dropped, but also the rape and murder of a young 14-year-old girl who was the daughter of one of his friends. Ironically, Alton was not convicted of those prior rape and sex crime charges because he had a way of intimidating his accusers to make them drop the charges, and also a way of convincing the jury that police had arrested the wrong man. Alton believed that he had voodoo spirits that protected him from the law. After he was accused of that last rape and murder, though, it was then that he decided to go on the run. So I guess that's when he realized that whatever voodoo spirits he felt like were protecting him, they weren't protecting him anymore, because that's when he and his girlfriend Debra decided to leave the state and go on the run.
Voodoo spirit. Hold on, I just gotta.
Did you just realize what I said?
Yeah, it just had to click, like voodoo spirit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he practiced witchcraft too?
Well, it didn't really say that he practiced witchcraft in the articles that I read, but that's just what he believed in. So I don't know how much practicing he was doing, but that was just a belief system that he had. I guess you know how I believe that the Lord covers me. I believe in God, Jesus Christ.
Okay.
I guess he believed that voodoo spirits covered him and protected him from the law. Gotcha. But I don't know what he practiced though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So the authorities noted that the killing couple was known to target other African Americans by blending in with their surroundings and befriending strangers. Their kindness would then turn into brutal assaults, rape, and murders of most of their victims. Authorities believe that even though almost all the victims were African American, like the couple themselves, the crimes were not believed to have been racially motivated. Instead, they believed the couple simply targeted their victims because they knew that they could blend in better within the black community. So authorities basically were saying that, these crimes were probably going to happen to anyone, anywhere the couple could have gotten access to. But in this case, it just happened to be within the black community, which is just terrible how they did these people.
That is horrible to even come to that conclusion.
Exactly. It really is. So here's how the crime spree began. In May 1984, when Alton was on the run from the law, it was then that he befriended a woman named Juanita Wheat, who lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Juanita was the mother of 9-year-old Vernita. Over a couple of weeks, Alton befriended Juanita and he visited her and her children quite often. On May 29, 1984, Juanita gave permission for Vernita to go with Alton to his apartment to pick up some stereo equipment. Alton and Vernita never returned. It turns out that Alton had kidnapped Vernita and took her to Waukegan, Illinois. Vernita's body was later discovered on June 19, 1984, in an abandoned building approximately 4 blocks from where Alton's grandmother's apartment was located. Vernita's body was badly decomposed and the cause of death was ligature strangulation. Police found a fingerprint at the scene that belonged to Alton. But that fingerprint that they found, it wasn't immediately connected to Alton. And that's unfortunate for the rest of these victims because this was crime number 1.
They could have nipped it in the bud right then and there.
Exactly. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. All right. So in June 1984, Alton and Debra were now in Gary, Indiana, where they encountered 2 young girls, 9-year-old Annie and her 7-year-old aunt, Tamika Turks. Both young girls were walking home from a candy store when the couple spotted the 2 young girls and lured them into some nearby woods. Both girls were bound and gagged with strips of cloth that was torn from Tamika's shirt. Alton, who was annoyed by Tamika's crying, he held his hand over her nose and mouth while Debra stomped on her chest, and then he strangled her to death with elastic from a bedsheet. Meanwhile, poor helpless Annie was forced to watch, and then later she was forced to have sex with both adults. The killer couple beat and choked Annie. Tamika's partially decomposed body was discovered on June 19, 1984, ironically the same exact day that Vernita's body was found. The cause of Tamika's death was also ligature strangulation. Believe it or not, Annie survived this horrific crime, but in a tragic turn of events, her grandmother later killed herself because she was unable to deal with what had happened to her daughter and her granddaughter.
Oh my goodness.
So sad. And if I'm not mistaken, the girls were both at, like I said, they were aunt and niece, so the girls were both at their grandmother's and mother's house. I think she kind of felt guilty about the fact that they were under her watch when this whole thing happened. And it was also documented that later, the survivor of this particular crime, Annie, said that she would never get married or have kids because of the trust issues that she ended up having due to this crime. Just terrible. On the same day that the bodies of Vernita and Tamika were found, Alton befriended Donna Williams, age 25, of Gary, Indiana. She only knew Alton for a short period of time before she and her car went missing. Less than a month later, on July 11th, 1984, Donna's badly decomposed body was discovered in Detroit, about half a mile from where her car was found, but also about 4 blocks from where Alton's grandmother lived. In this case, the cause of death was also ligature strangulation. So by this time, ladies, there's a pattern here. There's three crimes that have been committed. A couple of the crimes were committed in one place, but bodies were found near the grandmother's house. And also, the strangulation is the method of choice to take out the lives of these people. This is just terrible. It almost kind of reminds me of like a fetish killing.
Yeah.
With patterns like that, it's almost like, okay, they're getting off on how they're doing this and what they're doing. It's crazy. Also, on June 28th, 1984, Alton and Debra entered the home of Mr. and Mrs. Palmer Jones, who resided in Dearborn Heights, Michigan. Palmer was handcuffed by Alton and then badly beaten. And Mrs. Jones, the wife, was also attacked, and Alton stole the elderly couple's money and car. This particular couple survived the crime committed against them. The day after Independence Day, on July 5th, 1984, Alton and Debra went to Toledo, Ohio, where Alton befriended a woman named Virginia Temple. Virginia had several children, with her oldest child, age 9, being Rachel. When Virginia stopped communicating with her relatives, her family became concerned concerned about her and the children, so they decided to go to her home. Upon entering the home, they found the young children there alone and frightened, but unfortunately they found Virginia and Rachel's bodies in a crawl space. And like I mentioned, Rachel was the oldest daughter of Virginia. The cause of death for both Virginia and Rachel was strangulation as well. They also found that a bracelet was missing from the home and later discovered it under a body with another victim that was found in Cincinnati that I'll get to in just a moment. On July 11th, 1984, just a few days after Virginia Temple and her daughter were murdered, the couple befriended Toni Story, age 15, from Cincinnati, Ohio. She was reported missing after she failed to return home from school that day. Sadly, her body was found 8 days later in an abandoned building. She had been strangled to death. One of Toni's classmates, one of the witnesses, testified that she saw Alton talking to Toni the day that she disappeared. A fingerprint at the crime scene was also linked to Alton, and that bracelet, the one that was missing from Virginia Temple's house, that was found underneath Toni's body. This is crazy. Super crazy.
Oh my goodness, they are like professionals or something. What is going on?
I don't know how professional they were, leaving stuff at different crime scenes and whatnot.
I mean, you manipulating everybody that you coming across.
That's true.
You skipping the sentencing and being charged.
Exactly. Ooh. Crazy. And when I saw this particular case, I mean, not this case, but this particular part of the case, I was wondering if Alton and Debra had used that bracelet to maybe lure Toni into talking to them.
That's what I'm saying. You like really, you're clever with your tactics. Like, what are you doing?
That's true. Yeah.
Ooh.
Crazy. So on the same morning as the murders of Virginia and Rachel, Alton and Debra entered the home of couple Frank and Dorothy Duvendak of Toledo, Ohio. When they got in the home of Frank and Dorothy, Alton tied the couple up with appliance and phone cords that had been cut. Alton and Debra then took their money and their car. They also stole one of Dorothy's watches, which was later found under another victim that I'll get to later, which is crazy. They weren't taking people's jewelry and stuff and going to the pawn shop. They actually had this stuff on them, apparently.
Not even planting it, but leaving it just careless.
Or dropping it. Who knows? Crazy.
I'm telling you, they got some good tactics. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess in a sense they could be considered professionals. You're right.
And I hate to trigger back, but let's roll back. Mentally retarded. I don't see anything.
Remember I told you? You were gonna probably think back on that.
I don't see anything mentally disorder. Okay.
Get these people away from wherever they are into these abandoned buildings, lure them somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And targeting people of all ages. Like, their victims ranged in age from like super young all the way up to people in their 70s. It's crazy. All right. So going back to July 5th, this is another break-in. On the July 5th, Alton and Debra showed up at the home of the Reverend Millard and Mrs. Catherine Gay of Dayton, Ohio. In this case, the killing couple stayed with Mr. and Mrs. Gay, and they also accompanied them to a religious service a few days later on July 9th. The next day, the Reverend and his wife dropped off Alton and Debra in downtown Cincinnati. Now, that kind of threw me off a little bit because I'm like, I wonder why they decided to not just trust this couple, but actually let them stay in their home. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, we're gonna love everyone and treat everyone nice, maybe give them some food or a couple of dollars, but these people let them stay in their house and went to church with them. So anyway, by this time Alton was on the FBI's radar, and by July 12, 1984, he was added to the 10 most wanted list as a quote-unquote special edition. Remember, Alton and Debra were taken to Cincinnati and dropped off on July 9th. So a few days later, on July 13th at around 9:30 a.m., they both rode bicycles over to Norwood, Ohio. It was there that they approached Harry and Marlene Walters, and they inquired about a camper that the couple had up for sale. Harry and Marlene invited Alton and Debra into their home. Harry sat on the couch and had conversations with them, and he and Alton discussed the sale of the camper, or shall I say, the details of the alleged sale of the camper. During the conversation, Alton picked up a wooden candlestick, and after he was sitting there pretending like he was admiring it, he ended up hitting Harry in the back of his head. The force of the blow broke the candlestick and drove a chunk of bone against Harry Walters' brain. From that point on, Harry remembered little else about the encounter and the attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy. At about 3:45 p.m., Harry and Marlene's daughter Sherry came home from work and found her parents, both her mother and father, at the bottom of the basement steps. Her father Harry was clinging on to life and Marlene was deceased. Both of them had ligatures around their throat and electrical cords had been tied around their bare feet. Marlene Walters' hands were bound behind her back and Harry's hands were handcuffed behind his back. Marlene's body had been covered with a bloody sheet. The coroner indicated that Marlene had been struck on the head approximately 20 to 25 times. 12 lacerations, some of which were made with a pair of vice grips, covered her face and her scalp. The back of her skull was smashed to pieces. Parts of her skull and brain were actually missing from the crime scene. The living room hallway, the basement, all of those areas were splattered with blood. Fragments of a broken soda bottle with Alton's fingerprints were found in the living room. Strands of Marlene's hair were found on a blood-stained magazine rack that was also located in the living room. Bloody footprints made by 2 different kinds of shoes were found in the basement. Although Harry survived this violent attack, he definitely suffered brain damage as a result of his injuries. By the time Harry and Marlene's bodies had been discovered, Alton and Debra had gotten away in the couple's family car, a red Plymouth Reliant. They drove that car to their next destination. They also had stolen some money, shoes, and jewelry. But listen to this. When the killer couple left that particular crime scene, they left their 2 bicycles and they also left behind some clothes and shoes. That's crazy.
Oh,
Yeah,
this is just getting worse by the moment. Like,
yeah,
hurry up and capture these suckers. Like, hurry up.
Right. It kind of makes me wonder, like, back in 1984, what were they using to investigate and follow leads? Because it was almost like the police kind of stayed 10 steps behind these people. You know, they would show up to a crime scene, but meanwhile, these again had went on to commit like 2 and 3 more crimes in the process, you know? So anyway, 2 days later, that Plymouth that they were driving, it showed up abandoned in the state of Kentucky. It was at that time the couple kidnapped a man named Alton Carmichael Jr. This particular person was a Williamsburg, Kentucky college professor. They drove back to Dayton, Ohio with their victim locked in the trunk of his own car. On July 17th, they abandoned this particular stolen vehicle, but thankfully, Alton Carmichael was found still alive in his trunk and he was rescued by local authorities.
Finally, somebody survived their whole ordeal.
Yeah, he's not the first one to survive, but as you can see, there's more victims than there are survivors. Yeah. So after that, Alton and Debra reappeared at the home of Reverend Miller and Catherine Gay. So remember, sippers, they were the friendly couple that took these killers to church with them after letting the couple spend the night in their home not too long after they had all met. My goodness. So Reverend Miller recognized Alton. By this time, he recognized him as the subject of this huge nationwide manhunt. This encounter that he had was not a friendly encounter, not as friendly as the first by any means. Alton accosted Reverend Miller and his wife with guns this time around. The Reverend was quoted to have asked Alton, "Why you want to do us like that, like this?" And according to the Reverend, Alton responded by saying, "I'm not going to kill you, but we generally kills them where we go." After that scary encounter, Alton and Debra took the friendly couple's car and they headed back towards Evanston, Illinois, which is where they were from. So on the way back home to Evanston, Alton and Debra decided to steal yet another car, but unfortunately, they murdered the 77-year-old man who owned it. I mean, this story just keeps getting crazier and crazier. These folks had lost their mind.
So you got car theft, murder,
rape, and kidnapping.
In what, 1 month time, 2 months?
Just a couple of months. Basically, they started in May and it ended in July.
Oh my God.
It was really busy.
Yeah, and not only that, but remember, it started because of Alton was getting ready to go to trial for a murder and rape of a 14-year-old girl. So instead of him saying, well, let me just disappear and go hide out somewhere because I'm running from the cops, he decides to go run away from the cops but commit more crimes than what he already had under his belt. That's what threw me off about this whole case.
Crazy that he could do that much in this little bit of time and wasn't caught within. I mean, it just seems like they could have caught him, but I guess, back in the day and forensics and timing and all that stuff, it a little slower, but damn, he was able to do a lot in these little 2 months.
He was. And that's the thing. I was just kind of like, dang, what was going on in 1984 where they just stayed all these steps behind Debra and Alton, remember, who were both diagnosed as being mentally retarded. Like, that just makes it even more crazy that the authorities couldn't keep up with these folks. That's crazy. All right. So on July 20th, 1984, back in Evanston, Illinois, someone from Alton's old neighborhood pulled up to a red light, and as he was waiting at the red light, he spotted Alton and Debra crossing the street right in front of his car. Even though he only knew Alton from casual encounters, he definitely recognized him as the guy that the FBI was looking for. So as Debra and Alton continued walking down the street, that witness drove over to the nearest gas station and used that payphone to go ahead and notify police of the couple's whereabouts. Isn't that crazy how he had to actually drive to go to the nearest phone?
Right. I was about to say, was 911 a thing back then?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Because I would have been the person back then who didn't have a quarter or however much the payphone cost. I never
75 cents.
I never have cash on me or change. I don't think the payphone was 75 cents back in the 80s.
Like a nickel or a dime, maybe.
No, that's what I'm thinking.
That's too low. It
was 25 cents in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's why it had to be lower back in the 80s.
I always use a quarter with you, because I remember that. I always take a quarter with you so you can get home.
Yep. That was a little lesson before you leave the house. Make sure you have some money in case you had to use the payphone.
Oh my God.
We're telling our age.
I really can't remember.
We're telling.
I don't think ever got to 75 cents before they all took them out.
I think it might have got up to close to 50 cents before they were.
Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. I really can't remember.
Yeah, so old buddy had to go over to the gas station and use that payphone and call the authorities. Once he called the authorities, the information was dispatched and the description of the killer couple was broadcasted. As officers pulled into the area, a detective spotted Alton and Debra sitting on some bleachers in an empty nearby park. He noted that the couple was wearing different t-shirts than the description that they were given once that witness called in. The detective informed the other units just as two sergeants were driving by the park. He just wanted to let them know, hey, I think I see them, but they've got on different shirts or whatever. So as the officers heard the new broadcast, they turned in and they spotted the couple. So as Alton was approached by the officers, Debra began walking away, heading towards the rear of the park. When Alton was approached for questioning and as he was being interviewed, two other officers went and tracked down Debra as she tried to exit the park. She was searched and a gun was found in her purse. Alton had no identification on him, and initially he tried to deny that he was Alton Coleman, but both Alton and Debra were taken into custody without incident, and they were transported to the Evanston Police Department, where they both were identified by their fingerprints. At the police station, Alton was strip searched, and a steak knife was found between two pairs of his sweat socks that he was wearing. When taken into custody, the killer couple had a shopping bag full of different t-shirts and caps. It was later learned that as the two were walking, they would stop every 3 to 4 blocks to change shirts and caps. A week after the killer couple was arrested, more than 50 law enforcement officials from the states of Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Kentucky, they all met to plan their strategy for prosecuting Alton and Debra. The state of Michigan, which did not have the death penalty, was quickly ruled out as the place to begin prosecution. Eventually, the state of Ohio was given the first shot at convicting the crime spree killer couple. During an interview, the U.S. attorney at the time, Dan K. Webb, was quoted as saying, "We are convinced that prosecution in Ohio can most quickly and most likely result in the swiftest imposition of the death penalty against Alton Coleman and Debra Brown." The authorities knew what they wanted. They mainly wanted to go after the death penalty for the couple, but also they had to take into consideration that with lack of evidence, believe it or not, the couple wasn't even able to be tried for all of the crimes that they committed. So
get out of here. No.
They weren't.
No.
Lack of evidence. So while they had plenty of evidence in some of these cases, they had lack of evidence in other cases. The killing couple, they were ultimately charged or wanted for questioning and assaults on at least 20 different people in 13 separate attacks. All of that including at least 8 murders. During Debra's sentencing during her Ohio trial for the aggravated murders of Marlene Walters and Tony Story, she handed the judge a note which read in part, "I killed the bitch and I don't give a damn. I had fun out of it." Talk about cold-hearted. And you trying to tell me that these people were mentally retarded? In what way? Like, you actually had the nerve, the audacity to write a note and give it to the judge. That's crazy. In the state of Indiana, the couple was found guilty of murder, rape, and attempted murder, and they both received the death penalty. Alton received an additional 100 years, while Debra received an extra 40 years on charges of child molestation and kidnapping. Debra's death sentence in Ohio was later reduced to life because of her low IQ scores and her nonviolent history before she got with Alton. Basically, she received sympathy due to her dependent personality because allegedly this made her susceptible, to being under Alton's control. So Debra still faces the death penalty in Indiana, but she is currently serving her time in the Ohio Reformatory for Women, and she's serving her time without the possibility of parole. On the other hand, Alton was executed by lethal injection on April 26, 2002 for the murder of Marlene Walters, the crime that happened in Norwood, Ohio. During the execution, Alton recited, "The Lord is my shepherd," during that time that he was being executed. Is that not crazy? So you went from thinking that voodoo was protecting you.
You right. He is your shepherd. He got a judgment for you, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You little evil, wicked thing.
Isn't that crazy? So at the time of his execution, he was the only condemned person in the United States to have death sentences in 3 states. That's crazy, man. So he's gone, but Debra is still serving her time. And to me, I don't care how many life sentences they could have gotten for these crimes. It still would never be enough for that rampage that they went on, that killing spree that they did over a course of from May to July, like 2 months basically. All those lives that they touched and scarred for no reason basically. I mean, like, troubled childhood does not mean it's okay to become a mass murderer, a serial killer.
Basically for the fun of it, because it was fun.
Right. And they befriended all those people. So it's like they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly how to get into these people's homes. They knew how to charm these people. Like, you stopping by talking about, hey, let's go talk to this couple and check on this vehicle they have for sale, knowing this whole time that you were trying to get inside their house to rob and kill. Oh, just sick.
It is. I just don't see any mental disorder. I don't.
Right.
I
Crazy.
don't.
But even though they were both diagnosed with something being mentally wrong with them, they were obviously mentally disturbed, of course.
Yes. Now
but
that would be.
Yeah. But I'm glad that they didn't reduce their cases and put them like in a mental institution. Like, I'm glad they still was able to put them in jail. Like I said, one was, executed and the other one is still in jail. But sometimes I hear where they put people in a mental institution and I'm like, nah, that's not enough. To serve the rest of your life in a mental institute is just not enough when it's just these crimes that were committed. It just, the crime didn't fit the time, or however you say it.
Is it the crime didn't fit the time, or the time didn't fit the crime?
The time doesn't fit the crime.
So in this case, I feel like
the time does fit.
I'm all tongue-tied with that whole little saying or whatever, but y'all get what I'm saying. They both ended up where they were supposed to be.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, ladies, oh my goodness, it is time to close the book on the case of Alton Coleman and Debra Brown.
Yeah, but they like, I don't know, they not a Bonnie and Clyde, but gosh.
Notice I never made that comparison when I was talking about this case, because I definitely thought about making the comparison, but then as I did more research, I was like, nah,
they not a Bonnie and Clyde, but they are evil.
Yeah. Definitely. To the highest level.
Yeah, that's too much.
Evil to the highest level. Whew. So if y'all are okay with moving on, we're going to close the book on this case. Any last words from either of you ladies?
Not for those people.
No, but now I'm out of drink because I kept sipping every time you said they did this and did that. And good gosh, I have nothing left.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and close the book. And in the meantime, we'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and refill your drink or whatever you need to do.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Thank you.
And we're going to move on while Demetrius is fixing her a little re-up over there. We're going to move on to a lighter topic. We actually have 1, possibly 2 Spill the Wines on today's show. So for you sippers that might be new to our show, I'm going to tell you this. Our Spill the Wine segment is where you, our sippers, send us an email or DM asking our opinion about a situation that you need some advice on. The 3 of us will give our separate viewpoints and share our opinions about how you should resolve your issue. All Spill the Wine submissions are anonymous and we will never share your identity. So with that being said, ladies, what is our Spill the Wine for today?
Uh-oh. Sippers, are you ready? Please help this young woman out.
What you got for us,
okay, ladies,
girl?
I was in the inbox dipping and diving.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is from a female, and it says, My sister's husband makes me very uncomfortable, but how do I tell my sister? My brother-in-law has been pushing boundaries as of late. We are all gathered together for birthdays, holidays, and other family events, and he is very touchy. Yes, he has to place his arm around me at my lower waist. That's in parentheses.
No, he
Yes.
Okay.
His hugs are not the normal greeting hugs, but more of a partnership kind of hug. And recently, he has been trying to grab at my hands and smacking my behind, but only when he feels others aren't watching.
Say what?
He recently tried to kiss me, but what? Okay.
Wait, you got me. This is her brother-in-law smacking her ass?
When he feel like no one is watching. Okay, here we go. He recently tried to kiss me when we were all leaving an event. I want to address my sister about it, but don't know how to approach this situation without upsetting her or causing problems in her marriage. Do I tell her at all, or do I keep it to myself and suffer through this situation?
Honey child, boom boom kitty. First of all,
I never heard that one. Boom boom.
First of all, why this fool hadn't been cussed out yet?
Yes.
Like, it has gone on for however long it has gone on, and that is too long, whatever that time frame is. That fool should have been cussed out and put in his place a long time ago. So I'm going to start with that and let whoever else wants to chime in while I think about how to word the next part of what I don't know.
You know, I don't like to do domestics. So here we go.
Well, my thing is, your body is, you should set boundaries for your body. So just because somebody wants to hug you does not mean you have to hug them back.
Exactly.
Okay. You don't have to have him, put his arm around you. None of that. Like, when I go to family things and if he was there, he would not get a hug. You stay on one
at a distance.
Other. He does not have to touch you. So you don't just let that happen and just, like be quiet about it.
And the first time he hit her ass, his damn hand should have been detached from his wrist.
She also stated he tried to kiss her. So, yeah. And try to grab at her hand when he feel like others aren't watching. Like, he tried to grab her hand.
He should have got her behind, slapped in the face. Oh, that's crazy.
I'm trying to think, what would you do? So would you tell your sister? And
yeah, she want to know.
I don't know. I think I would say something out loud in the family thing when he does something, right when he does it. Like, why is your arm around me? With everybody looking and being like, wait a minute, what's going on? But I wouldn't like suffer and think about, him doing all this stuff, like, and be quiet about it.
But how does she tell her sister though? Like, hey, I feel uncomfortable when he's at events, coming around birthdays.
I would definitely talk to the sister for sure. Like, I don't think I would call the sister. I think they would need to have a face-to-face conversation. So invite the sister out for lunch. We're not playing around with let's go do drinks. Let's go have some wine. No, let's go have lunch because I want to have a serious conversation with you.
Just because.
You would want him to be there as well.
We're all going to talk about this all together. So we all know what's going on. That one-on-one.
Okay.
Because then she might turn it around and be like, well, I don't know.
My thing is, would he be in like a denial mode? Like, no, that's not how.
That's what I was going to say. I wouldn't want him at the first conversation. Like, I would want to talk to my sister first without his influence in the conversation, because I feel like any man in that position would think that he has some kind of power over you first.
The conversation
and think exactly. Yeah. So I would want to get my words out without him being present. That would be probably the difference. I agree. I think they all should have a conversation, but for me, that first one is going to be one-on-one with my sister.
Ugh, that's just.
I don't know. Now you're getting physical. I mean, you're hugging. Your hugging is more like a partnership hug. Like, why are you hugging her like that?
She allowed this.
What happened to the pat on the back?
She didn't address it the first time. He feels that he can do this because she's not saying. So he's going further and further and further, on what he's doing. Because smacking on the ass, like, wow.
That's pretty crazy, man. I can't even imagine nothing crazy like that happening. But when I do imagine it, though, it's like he would have got cussed out.
Yeah. But I wonder if she just didn't want to include that in, if she did that, or if she just didn't approach him because she didn't want to cause any kind of conflict. I don't know.
Right. And does it mention whether or not she has a significant other?
No, it doesn't. It just states that how does she approach her sister about her brother-in-law.
Yeah, anytime somebody has come at me sideways, I definitely have gone to my husband. Like, hey, here's what happened. And he's addressed certain issues Actually, he's addressed all of the issues. So yeah, unless it was work related, and then you let work handle the work related stuff. So for something that's close as a brother-in-law, I would definitely, that would have been handled by my man.
Yeah,
I
because
would have went
he's
straight
gonna
to
be
him
at all
first.
your events, the birthdays, the holidays,
Yeah.
mother-in-law, get-togethers, and
Exactly.
wow.
Like what happened? Like the scenario? Can you share it on here or no?
It's more than once. So the most recent situation was a few years back, and as a matter of fact, the person followed our page for a while until I blocked them off of our page.
Oh.
We have mutual friends. So he and his wife were always at their events, and I just saw them again recently. So there was one night that we were all drinking. It was probably New Year's Eve. And so we were sitting, and I'm sitting next to my husband. Now he's next to me. His wife is next to him. And all of a sudden, he puts his arm around my waist while I'm in my chair. So I looked over at my husband, because initially I'm just like, okay, where is he going with this? And then he slid his arm down and like squeezed my thigh or whatever. So I got up and I told the host of the party, I told both of them, and they were like, he's drunk or whatever, he doesn't mean anything by it, da, da, da. So then I called my husband back there and his wife. So anyway, it was like all of us were talking about it. So my husband goes back over to the guy and asks him, hey man, what's up with you? My wife said you did this and da da da. And he's all, I kind of feel like he was acting more drunk than he actually was, because I guess maybe he thought I wasn't going to say nothing. Maybe he thought that I gave him some kind of sign that night to let him know that I wanted him to touch me, which I didn't. Not sure what was going through his mind, but they ended up walking his ass outside and telling his wife to get him home. And so it didn't get violent, but it very well could have. And so after that, he sent me this long apology that he wrote to me and my husband. But get this, his mother-in-law said that he tried to come at her inappropriately one night while they were at an event. Right, I found this out later. So he ended up going to rehab for alcohol drinking. Yeah, exactly. So for about a year or so, we never saw them. And then when we did again, everything seemed good. So yeah, that's one of the times when my husband had to like say something. But in this case, he had other people kind of backing him up as well, because
that nigga was drunk that night.
But that still doesn't excuse your inappropriate behavior, as your wife
Right there
was sitting there, and
I know.
I'm sitting
Same
next to
thing
my
with
husband.
Same thing with the little inbox. Like, why you get to smack my ass, put your hand around my lower waist? Like, why?
But anyway, hopefully we helped you in some kind of way with your situation.
Yes, I would approach the sister. I don't know if collectively all three of you guys together, but I would approach the sister.
And next time he touches you, you say something.
That's crazy. Hopefully it all works out for you. And sippers, if you would like to submit a Spill the Wine, feel free to DM us on any of our social media platforms, or you can email us at sipandunwind@gmail.com. And we would love to read your submission on one of our future episodes of our True Crime Podcast. This concludes this week's episode of Sip and Unwind. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms so that you can be the first to listen to new episodes that post every single Tuesday.
That's right.
All right, ladies, it has been fun as usual. I had a great time telling this story, talking about this case, and discussing these Spill the Wines with you ladies.
Yeah, keep them coming. Please.
Yes, please. All right, sippers. Bye. Bye, ladies. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, sippers.